Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Wellington Shire Council on Tuesday, the 19th of November 2019. Members of the public gallery should note that Council records and publishes Council's meetings via YouTube to enhance the accessibility of Council meetings to the broader Wellington community. These recordings are also archived and may be published on Council's website for viewing by the public or used for publicity or information purposes. At the appropriate time during the meeting, members of the gallery may address the Council, at which time their image, comments or submissions will be recorded. Members of the public who are not in attendance at the Council meeting but who wish to communicate with the Council via the webcasting chat room should lodge their questions or comments early in the meeting to ensure that their submissions can be dealt with at the end of the meeting. Please could gallery visitors and councillors ensure that mobile phones and other electronic devices are turned off or in silent mode for the duration of the meeting, and if we could stand for the acknowledgement and the prayer. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, the Gunai people, and pay respects to their elders past and present. Almighty God, we ask your blessing upon the Wellington Shire Council, its councillors, officers, staff and their families. We pray for your guidance in our decisions so that the true good of the Wellington Shire Council may result to the benefit of all residents and community groups. Amen. CEO, any apologies? The CEO, David Morecambe?
Yes, the CEO.
No other apologies. Do we have any declarations of conflicts of interest? Councillor
Thanks, Mayor. I have a conflict at item C 5.1, an indirect interest conflict of duty.
Thanks, Councillor Bye. Moving on to item Councillor McCubbin.
Yeah, thank you very much. I also have a conflict under Section 79 of the Act. It's also an indirect due to conflict of duty based on an issue that's been covered in the closed session in regard to the Australia Day Awards.
Thanks, Councillor McCubbin.
Thank you.
We move on to item A4, confirmation of minutes of the previous council meeting. Councillor Bye.
Thanks, Mayor. I move that Council adopt the minutes and resolutions of the ordinary council meeting of the 6th of November 2019.
That was seconded by Councillor Rossetti. Is that opposed? If not, the motion is carried. Councillor Bye, move on. There's no business arising from previous meetings. Acting CEO?
No.
No late items?
No.
Moving on to item A7.1, notice of motion, native timber harvesting ending. Councillor Hole.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, I'd like to move, and I apologise for the length of the motion pack. I'd like to move that in relation to the state government's recent announcement that native timber harvesting will be phased out by 2030 with an immediate end to old growth logging, that one, Mayor write to the Premier of Victoria expressing this council's profound disappointment with this surprise decision. It is particularly vexing that mill operators, councils, the directly affected communities and other key industry stakeholders were given no opportunity for input or comment into a critical decision that was taken unilaterally and in an apparent shroud of government secrecy. This decision is at odds with the government's publicly stated aim of establishing community engagement platforms like regional partnerships to recognise that local communities are in the best position to understand the challenges and opportunities faced by their region. Further, the Council seeks specific comments from the Premier regarding A, in the interest of transparency, the government must make public the scientific and peer-reviewed evidence that it used on which to base its decision and conclude that existing forestry practices are unsustainable. B, the impact this decision will have on regional employment. By way of example, Australian Sustainable Hardwoods and Hayfield employs 170 local Gippsland workers and around 114 of these in their rapidly growing advanced manufacturing, as the domestic demand for quality hardwood continues to grow. Ironically, the government owns 49% of this business. That also supports approximately 10,000 downstream jobs located throughout Victoria. What assurance and evidence can the government provide that these jobs will be secured? While the government has moved to retain employment security at Australian Paper in the Latrobe Valley, there seems scant regard for the hundreds of timber workers who will be impacted elsewhere. The announcement of $120 million to assist the community transition leaders work with affected workers, communities and businesses comes with no detail and no strategy other than a vague assurance that the government will help us work through this. Will the government guarantee that there will be no net job losses in these communities as a result of this decision? There are no details for any support packages which we understand will not become available under 2024. And why won't they be made available immediately? C. Council has already heard many bushfire experts advising that these announced changes to forestry practices, the potential for bushfire emergency will become catastrophic. Specifically, the decision will lead to large capacity machines like bulldozers, excavators and graders being removed from fire-prone forests, and including the local knowledge of the machine operators that are available in the event of a large-scale fire. Further, existing access roads will be closed or fall into disrepair, with many of these roads normally being used as a Plan B or secondary route in the event of a large-scale fire. What is the government's plan to fund the upkeep of these roads, and who will fill the gap left by Forest Management Victoria after their departure? In short, what specific plans does the government have to ensure our local communities are not subjected to increased risk? And two, the Mayor sent a copy of this motion to the Premier, the Gippsland Local Government Network Councils, seeking their support in a combined position, and B, to send it to the Municipal Association of Victoria, Timber Towns Victoria, the National Timber Councils Association, the Victorian Association of Forest Industries, Australian Forest Products Association, local federal member Darren Chester, federal minister for agriculture the Honourable Bridget McKenzie, all Victorian upper and lower house members representing Gippsland, and the owners of all timber mills and timber processing businesses in eastern Victoria.
Thanks, Councillor Hull. Do I have a second for that motion? Councillor McCubbin. Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion is carried.
Division.
Call division. Those in favour?
Councillor Hall, Councillor Crossley.
Councillor Hall, Crosley, Maher, Rossetti, Hall, Bye, McCubbin, Ripper and Stevens. Councillor Hall, before we speak, this is an important motion, and I give any councillor the opportunity to speak this if they wish to. Can I just add to this the severity of the situation? Councillor Hall has clearly been working tirelessly in regard to this matter from the moment it hit the proverbial fan. But it would be fair to say that when we said we were blindsided for me started at 8 o'clock in the morning, the day that the announcement was to be made at 10. So I got a call from the ministerial advisor at 8 o'clock in the morning, a somewhat nervous-sounding young bureaucrat who was having some difficulty conveying to me this message with 2 hours' notice of going public. Apparently it had hit the age the day before. There was a nervousness in his voice, and I can understand why. This decision seems to have been made in haste, based upon political expediency and what we're seeking and what's so critically important. If you read Councillor Hall's motion, this is about the data, this is about the facts, this is about the evidence. We want to deal with this matter on that basis and that basis alone, rather than in fact some knee-jerk decision for some political reason that makes absolutely no sense. And yes, we've got affected communities. The people in Hayfield are an incredibly resilient group, in particular, our primary concern. And Australian Sustainable Hardwood in Hayfields is a flagship operation, one that we can be justifiably proud of, one that's innovative and looking to in fact secure its future and the future of the people of Hayfield. The people of Hayfield have shown again resilience, and their reaction to this has been one, I think, of some confidence in the sense that they know what they've got, how good they are at it, and they just want to see a way forward. We believe there is potentially a better way to deal with this issue. We're sure there's a better way to deal with it strategically, a better way to understand how we make our industry sustainable. And all we need from the government is for them to show us how they got there, so we can query what they did, how they got there, how this decision was made. And on that basis, we're continuing to meet. I meet again tomorrow with the federal, I think it's the Assistant Minister for forestry and other matters in Bairnsdale. I met in Spring Street with Melina Bath whilst the first part of the campaign was being raised by the industry. Discussions, as I said, with Ash, with Timbull, with every industry representative we can find, and we will continue to work tirelessly in regard to supporting not only what is an incredibly important industry for us, but for the rest of this state. As Councillor Hull pointed out, there's somewhere in excess of 10,000 downstream jobs which will be affected by this, from a timber industry which is maintained in a sustainable fashion. And just ask yourself the question, if we don't continue to do this, where will that hardwood come from? Perhaps somewhere overseas where they in fact pay scant regard not only to sustainability but for the endangered species in their part of the world. So that's my 5 minutes worth. If anyone else would like to speak to this matter. Councillor Hull, I think I'm in your hands really, but...
It'd be nice to speak to my motion, Mr Mayor. Thank you for the opportunity. And I apologise for the length of the motion, but we're not too sure where this issue is going to run, and so the motion gives us the opportunity as a council. Hopefully we'll have all bases covered with who we have to deal with in state, federal politics, and on all sides of the spectrum, as well as all the timber industry groups in Canberra, as well as in Victoria. But the shock announcement that came out 10 days ago, and it was a shock announcement because it wasn't a pre-election commitment, and as we find now through the corridors of power at Parliament House, there was a stitch-up before the election where the deal was done for Greens preferences to flow to the Labor Party on the basis that within 12 months of being elected, the native timber would be closed down. And Gary Blackwood, the member for Narrowcan, addressed Parliament the other day and made that claim. In fact, he even named the two members of the Labor Party who were responsible for helping the Premier make the decision. It's interesting that the day before, on the Wednesday, and those of us who read the newspapers and listened to the television would have seen the ALP federally talking about the review and why they lost the unlosable election. And one of the things that came out very strongly was they had forgotten to look after the blue-collar worker. And come Thursday, the Victorian Labor Party kicked the guts out of the blue-collar workers. I'm going to talk, unfortunately it's going to be a little bit long because of some of the information that I have. I'll be talking a little bit in relation to being a bit parochial, no, probably a lot parochial, a bit regional, and part rural Victoria. As we know, ash timber in Hayfield, as I said in the motion, has 170 workers whose jobs are in jeopardy. But it's not only 170 jobs that are in jeopardy, it's 170 families that may lose their income. And last night when I was running through the impact down the line, and I've got to tell you, and most of you probably know, timber workers are pretty good breeders. And so there's in the vicinity of probably 500 children involved. It's all right. These are facts. I can back it up with school numbers. But in our region, if just to extrapolate it out, that's 25 football teams, junior football teams, that we may lose in our Shire as their dads have to go up to find work elsewhere. There's no guarantee that after 2024, whether the timber will be there or whether it won't be. We're finding out that like the Mayor, I've had plenty of discussions with members of Parliament on both sides of the House, and I can assure you that there are members of the current state government who are very disappointed as to what's happened, because we're pro-timber and we're not part of any discussion until it was told it was going to happen. It's ironic that when the Premier made the announcement, he didn't come and stand outside the mill, he didn't come and stand outside Australian paper. He didn't come outside anybody else that processes hardwood. He went down to the nursery at Jelliendale, as far as you can get, as close as you can get to Tasmania, so that he could turn around and make the announcement. And the timing, as you said, Mr. Mayor, you got the phone call about 8 o'clock in the morning. At 10 o'clock he was down, and by 10:30 the news bulletins were full of the news that the industry in Gippsland was about to be knocked off. We're lucky that on a regional basis, East Gippsland and the Trove Shires have already moved their motions against the decision, and the request is, as per our motion tonight, to bring in the Gippsland Local Government Network so that the 6 Gippsland councils will go down with a unified voice and a strong, powerful representation, hopefully to meet the Premier, so that he can explain to us why he's knocking us off. But the affected bodies are not only just timber workers. In Bawbaw, in Warragul, there's a particular company down there that manufactures machinery specifically for the timber industry. When Hazelwood closed down, they took 7 engineers and put them on the staff to give them a job. And the other day, on Friday, when the announcement was, the day after the announcement was made, the timber industry were cancelling their orders because there was no future, no security for millions of dollars worth of equipment. The other, I suppose, hard done by coming up will be those who've got trucks, sell petrol, machinery. In fact, the William Adams contractor in the valley has just put on 9 apprentices. 30% of their work comes from the timber industry. The upshot is they're not sure whether there will be any apprentices coming next year and whether they'll be able to keep on the staff that they've got. So the uncertainty out there is really starting to bite home as the reality comes into everybody's mind as to where we're going. The impact on rural Victoria would be huge, and I'm talking regional, but on the other side of the ranges, there's another 7 councils up there from Indigo through to Towong, pick up Murrindindi and Mansfield and Alpine and all those places up there, also now will be facing a severe job shortage. And so there's going to be, God knows how many people have a job. We're talking 10,000 down the line from our side. I don't know how many, I don't have the figures as to what's supplied over there. And the interesting thing is the story that's being pushed is just by those pro to stop native logging of old growth. Well, there's no such thing as old growth if you've been around. It's all regrowth. Most of that country has been burnt by fire since 1889, and we've had the big fire of 1939. We had the 3 or 4 fires around us in the last 10, 11 years, and we were lucky that we didn't get impacted in our towns, although unfortunately Marysville did. But they took out so much of the harvest, the trees that would be harvested. And in the hardwood area of Gippsland, out of every 10,000 trees, only 4 trees are allowed to be harvested. So the event is the ability to harvest 0.04% of the native forest is all that's allowable. And remember, they can't go into the national park. It is strictly in the native forest. And much has been made about the red-bearded possum. And the 1939 Sun newspaper had a big splurge on about page 5 that the Victorian fauna emblem, which was the lead-bearded possum, had been wiped out. Fires had wiped them out. And nobody bothered looking to see whether that was fact or fiction, but they took it as being the truth coming from some newspaper, of course. 30 years later, that possum reappeared, and it was in the regrowth of the logging area. And that's where they are today. They can't find them in the national park, which is closed up and full of weeds and rubbish and wild pigs and everything else. But in the area of where the logging has occurred and the regrowth has come back, the possum is there, and the possum is being cared for and looked after and protected by the timber industry, not by the greenies. You don't see them up there nursing, cuddling and kissing goodnight. They tend to operate down in the Melbourne. Anyway, the other upshot that's going to be a big concern is the supply of firewood. We've got many of our elderly who buy from the wood merchants who have the licence to harvest up in that country. And where is their wood going to come from? It's all right for these Melbourne city-centric people because they're sucking the gas out of Wellington Shire, keeping their homes warm down there at our expense. But our people have to live in a new world coming up. And don't tell me they're going to live with solar heating and hopefully the gas line going past their place, because it isn't going to happen. I'd like to just finish up with just two more little jobs. One is the news item that everybody would have seen in relation to an ad or a big sign in Hayfield the other day outside a mill, and that particular mill produces pellets. That's all it produces. And the pellets have to be made from hardwood, not softwood, because the forklifts constantly bashing them. There's also another mill doing a similar thing up at Corrion. And that mill's now in its third generation producing pellets for CHEP. They wanted to upgrade their machinery and equipment, so the owner wrote to the Minister for Primary Industries, Jacqueline Symes, in August. And in October he received a reply which in part stated, "It is the Victorian Government's view that the careful management of Victorian state forests can support the sustainable supply of resources as well as the protection of diversity." And that came from the Minister. And then less than a month later, kicked the legs out from under it. There is a way forward. There's a regrowth from the 1939 fires on a range of timber called Silvertop. There's about 80 years supply. It's about 2 years away from coming into usable size, and I would hope that down the track we can convince the government to have a rethink of instead of closing up everything, to make this available. It's as good as the ash timber. In some cases it's better. It has great qualities. It's a hardwood, easy to manoeuvre. But from now till goodness knows where, I don't know where we're going to go. But our motion gives us as a council the opportunity to take the issue up, not only just locally, but also regionally in the state of Victoria. So I thank you for your unanimous vote.
Thanks, Councillor Hole, and I wish to speak to that motion. Councillor McCubbin.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor, and thank you very much for Councillor Hole for his motion and indeed his eloquent presentation of that motion. I'd also like to congratulate you, Mayor, and indeed the CEO for the many meetings that you've had up with Ash. As I know, Councillor Hole has been there as well, and Councillor Crossley has been involved. It's been something where it's been all hands on deck. Let me reiterate just three small points. Councillor Hole has, as I suggested, has spoken quite eloquently about it, so I don't need to add too much. But a couple of things I will add, and one is the vital nature of the Hayfield Timber Mill to our local economy. The need for those blue-collar jobs, as Councillor Hole has pointed out, the need for them and their families to feel secure under this new regime. And I call on the government to be able to secure those jobs. It's important and vital for our region, and particularly vital for Hayfield, that we get those jobs. And I'd say vital for the economy of Victoria. Sustainable timber is actually a good way to build houses. It's a good way to build furniture. We currently are sitting in a building which is made more beautiful by the fact that it contains natural hardwoods within it. It is a viable industry, and it's an industry which provides employment, good employment, for the good people of Hayfield in a rural area. It is of course something that, and that's why we've been asking for the data. Show us the data. Have a conversation with us. Show us the data. Show us why you had to make this rash decision without bringing us into the loop. The second point I'll make is maybe a controversial one, and that is that I am comfortable to suggest that we do need to have a conversation in regard to forest policy. And then indeed, if you look in the Gippsland Times today, Maury Colleen talking about a sustainable approach to logging. I believe the industry is best practice, but I'm very comfortable to have a conversation with the industry on board to have about where we're going and what we're doing. The continued forest wars are ridiculous. We need certainty in the industry. We need to be able to protect our native forests in some regards. We need to, of course, ensure that endangered species are looked after. I absolutely get that. Indeed, climate change is an issue that we're going to have into the future. But the way that we're currently, and therefore I understand that the way we're currently managing our forests can come under some discussion. I'm quite comfortable with that. But again, if we show the facts and figures, we can have a reasonable conversation. Right now, we're not having a reasonable conversation about forest industries. The third point I'll make is an optimistic one. And that is, I believe we have the best people here locally in our area. Radial Timber out of Yarram, they're an absolutely fantastic organisation who indeed are changing their practices to involve more plantation, as I understand it, and indeed are a very innovative and correct business. And you will not get a better management structure and company than Ash Hardwood in Hayfield. I'll mention Vince. We're lucky to have Vince Hurley. Vince is fantastic, okay? And what he is doing in Hayfield is to be congratulated and applauded. And this is the frustration that you've got. Yes, if you want to have a conversation about native forest, I absolutely get that. But why not utilise the absolute best management you possibly can? And we have it here locally amongst our industry leaders. And I would call on the government to use those people in the development of their policy moving forward. Because if you just ring Vince, and Councillor Hole has already mentioned it, innovative ideas such as the silver top, which is used in the regrowth of 39. We absolutely get that the 39 has created issues in regard to hardwood supply into the years, plus endangered species has. But with selective milling and indeed with the silver top, which is coming on stream, these are two absolutely sustainable, brilliant hardwood sources which can provide us with timber into the long term. And I call on the government to work with industry to come up with a solution that guarantees jobs within our area. I'll just finish again by congratulating Councillor Hole on bringing forward this motion, offering him my full support for that, and indeed thank you again, Mayor, for allowing me to speak.
Thanks, Councillor McCubbin. Councillor Marr, wish to speak?
Yes, I'd like to thank you, Mayor. Congratulations, Councillor Hole, on bringing this motion to Council, and well done everyone on voting on this unanimously. I just want to add that Yarram, a town that is close to my heart and where I'm from, is one of the affected townships with regard to this decision. And bearing in mind also that it is a community that's also affected by drought. And I can certainly assure everyone that hearing the Premier's announcement, surprisingly at Gilliandale, which is only a hop and skip away from Yarram, it was certainly a surprise to myself and many others. And why was that a surprise? Because we hadn't been consulted. We haven't seen the data upon which the information was based, and we're actually asking that the state government bring transparency with this decision. We also need to recognise that 94% of our forests are currently locked up, and old growth harvesting has not been done in many years. And of that 94%, 6% is available for harvesting, and of that it's 0.04%. And I really feel that this conversation is needed with the leaders in this space, as well as council, as well as everyone who is committed to this decision. So I would like to see the Premier having some serious reconsiderations with regard to this. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Maher. Councillor Crossley?
Thank you, Mayor. I think living in Cowra and being very close to the community of Hayfield, and I think their feelings were a bit similar to mine. It was a deep feeling of disappointment. I mean, we went through this as a community some 2.5 years ago, and they felt that they weren't consulted, that the decisions were handed out to them with no consultation or thought to the impact and deep impact that was going to have on that community. And then we clawed back that process, and we thought we had a listening government. We thought we had a government that understood the importance of this industry to our community, and particularly to ash. And then, again, without any consultation, without any even talking to the ash, which they are a 51% shareholder in, that they hadn't consulted with that major player, the biggest hardwood timber mill and industry in Australia. This is not a small player here. And for this remarkable decision to be made without consultation is just deeply, deeply disappointing. And that's the main feeling that Hayfield is in now. Again, disappointment. And I think the other part of the disappointment, and like Councillor McCubbin, I agree that our climate has changed. We are in a different world, and there are changes afoot in our forest. Mountain ash may be an endangered species, and many of the species, both fauna and flora, are at risk, and they're the canary in the mine that we have to take regard to. But there needs to be a just transition, and this is not just. The industry has been working, Ash has been working with the CSIRO and with the Melbourne University to bring in innovative ideas and changing infrastructure. They've spent $12 million expanding and improving their facilities, and we'll be spending more, $3 million next year, to actually bring in the state-of-the-art technology to be the most productive out of the timbers, and to source other sorts of timbers and utilise more plantation timbers. But this timeline of 2030 is just not long enough. These trees haven't been planted. These plantations don't exist. There's no transition to a tree that doesn't exist. So again, this is not a just transition to a community that is doing it tough, that has been knocked about, has pulled themselves up, rejigged, become an innovative and an industry of the future, and to have that whipped away from them again is just truly disappointing. And it's just, heart-wrenching that a government can do this without actually taking that into consideration. And if we talk of data, in 2012, the New South Wales Department of Primary Industry and Forestry said that the data showed that the greenhouse gas emissions abatement and carbon storage from a multi-use productive forest exceeded that of just a conservation forest alone. So managed forests that are harvested appropriately and then regrowth. The carbon is stored in these sort of things, in houses, not released, and then the regrowth, the new forest, basically harvests carbon. It takes carbon out of the atmosphere, much more than an old forest, than a stable forest that is not growing and that is decaying itself. So this is an important emission abatement program if managed correctly. So it's acknowledging that we are in a changed climate, but we can actually manage that and mitigate it and have a just transition, but we need a longer time and we need consultation with the communities that are affected.
Thanks, Councillor Crossley. Anyone else wish to speak in regard to this motion? If not, Councillor Rossetti.
Yeah, I think a lot's been said, Mayor, but I know it's been a real kick in the guts for the communities in Heyfield in particular. And they're a tough community. It's amazing how they do rally, but it's still another kick in the guts for them. But I really wanted to concentrate on two things. It's been said that about the carbon storage element. And one of the best ways of protecting that carbon that's stored in the forest is to stop it burning. And we know that the trails that are opened up for the firefighters and the works that can be done on actually making the habitat as close as we can to natural is done through managing. It's not done by locking up and leaving it. We might have this dream, utopian dream, that if we leave it, it becomes natural state. Well, we know that they're full of all sorts of introduced species, for instance, that no longer can go back to its natural state. So that the tracks that are opened up by the timber and the management that the timber people have in that area makes a big difference. But I think the one element that is being missed by those in the city in particular is actually how much they rely on the product coming out of these forests. If we actually stopped sending the material to Melbourne just for a month or 2 months, and people stopped being able to build the staircase in their new home, the sort of materials going into the housing industry, are we really expecting all these steel frames to go up now? Oh, but wait a minute, we don't want mining of iron either to make steel. So where are these houses going to be built from? We're going to have the orangutans in Borneo threatened because suddenly all the timbers are coming from there. So if we ignore, just put to one side the impacts on our communities, which is significant, and just realise that this is going to have a significant impact on what people are doing in the city, where they can actually, the product that they just expect to buy at Bunnings, they might have to go to IKEA. And that's not going to be locking up anything in, well, with all due respect to IKEA, of course, but the locking up of the carbon in these timbers, and these timber products, relies on a quality product being made. And we look around our communities on hard waste collection days, and you see all of the rubbishy made, cheap pine stuff just gets thrown out. And you have a look at the Antiques Roadshow, they don't keep chipboard, no chipboard desks there. Because the locking up of the carbon in those products is because people value the hardwoods. And that hardwood is exactly what is going to be lost. So that even if those who are outside of our region think it's just about jobs, jobs, jobs in our region, well, it's not. It's actually about the product that people all over the state, all over the country use from these forests that's going to be lost. And it's going to be very, very difficult to replace. We're certainly not going to do it with pine. And I get so disappointed when I drive past some of these new subdivisions and see the steel framed houses going up. Think, what a waste that is completely unsustainable, digging up product that is essentially fossil. Whereas the timber is actually able to be sustainable. You can regrow it. We've seen the timbers up there 60 years on, they're using exactly the same product. So in Melbourne, if you're looking at this sort of product or across the state, just think it's actually about you as well as about our community. It's about what you can do in your place. And I know that there's many architects that I know in Melbourne, for instance, who work with the beautiful timbers that come out of these forests. If they can't work with these timbers, I can't see them going to IKEA and getting their stuff from there. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Rossetti. Is there anyone else wishes to speak? If not, just before we close, can I firstly, Councillor Hull, apologise for my exuberance in regard to this matter. I did get a little excited and forgot about process. And the second thing I'd like to say is thank you for your continued efforts in this space, and to the officers and everyone who's been working so hard in regard to this critically important matter. A job well done. We'll continue to work as hard as we can for as long as we can to get the right outcome for our community and for the industry. But again, Malcolm, thanks so much for all of the work you're doing in this space right now. So if we could move on to item A8.2 Response to Petition Deciduous Trees in Desailly Street Sale. I should ask if there is anyone who wishes to speak to this motion. Is there anyone in the gallery who wishes to speak to this? If not, Councillor McCubbin, would you like to move this motion?
Thank you very much, Mayor. I'd like to move that in response to the petition presented at the Ordinary Council meeting of 18th of October 2019, Council 1, decline the request to remove trees in Desailly Street Sale. 2, authorise the Chief Executive Officer to write to the head petitioner to advise them of Council's decision and to provide information regarding Council's Autumn Street sweeping schedule, which would allow residents to rake leaves into the gutter for collection at scheduled times. And 3, authorise the Chief Executive Officer to also inform the head petitioner that the long-term health and amenity of the trees will be maintained and improved through the future bundling of the low-voltage power lines along Desailly Street in line with the established aerial bundle cabling program.
Secondly, Councillor Bai. Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion is carried. Councillor McCubbin.
Thank you very much. Firstly, I'd like to thank the petitioner for bringing this to Council's attention. It did actually provoke amongst us a very lively debate in regard to this, and I know many of us went out, had a look at the trees and had a conversation with them. And I absolutely sympathise with those people that are picking up the leaves outside on their trees. I maintain 4 acres myself out at Longford, and we've got trees everywhere, and it's many weekends of kind of fixing them up and ensuring that they're right. However, I will say though that the trees are a very special part of our urban forest. That is that the trees provide a comfortable shade, a livability aspect. I believe they add value to a housing street by having a leafy thoroughfare, and by people admittedly not necessarily live directly underneath them, but people who go up and down the street and live nearby really enjoy to see a leafy green townscape. So therefore, the idea that we would cut them down was inappropriate, and we aren't going to do that. I will, however, say that bringing our attention to the leaf issue is real and absolute, and we think the idea that the ratepayers should know when the street sweeper's coming along, there should be a schedule maintained and should be told to people so that if you know the street sweeper's coming, it's coming next Monday, well, if you push your leaves into the gutter, the street sweeper will pick them up for you as you go past. And indeed, we also had a long conversation, which is not in the motion, but I will tell you about it, that maybe into the future the idea of having an organic bin that collects that sort of organic waste is something that we should be considering into the future as well. That council should take a real and responsible attitude to the maintenance of these sorts of organic materials. So that was something we did conversation about. So the next point is, and you made a very good point in regard to the fact that trees look ugly when they're cut to bilio for the power lines, which is required, of course, and the increasing liability of these power lines within an urban situation. We are putting them on the list for aerial bundling. Whilst I can't promise that that's going to happen tomorrow, we certainly will be advocating for that to occur and ensuring that it happens in good time. We think the aerial bundling provides a solution. You don't need to cut back the trees as much, and the trees will look much more nicer in their existing setting. So whilst the petitioner, I would imagine, would be disappointed with the result, we're not cutting down the trees, I will say to them, however, with the picking up of the leaves by the street sweeper and the aerial bundling, that I think that we've got a couple of solutions to your problem. And again, I thank the petitioner for bringing it to our attention.
Thanks, Councillor McCubbin. Moving on to item A83, Receipt of Petition, Off-Road Bike Trail from Sale to Maffra. I understand we have someone in the gallery who wish to speak to this. So if you'd like to come forward to the lectern, state your name, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Norbert Fusel, local person from Sale. I'll read this. Dear Mayor and Councillors, I present you a petition to investigate and plan for an off-road bike track from Sale to Maffra to join Sale to the rail trail. In a 6-week campaign, we got 2,048 signatures, plus there are still some out there that I haven't collected. I was surprised by the enthusiasm of about 9 out of 10 people approached, most saying this should have been done years ago, and many asked for sheets so that they could get more signatures for us. The petition was left at local cafes at Hayfield, Maffra, Stratford and Sale, and also the bicycle stores. I was hoping to get 1,000 signatures, and I was overwhelmed with 2,000, and so I thought after 6 weeks it's time to present the petition. My reasons for wanting a path are safety and that I like cycling with the grandchildren. As an anaesthetist on call at the hospital for many years, I was involved in the care of too many cyclists who were hit by cars, many with serious and fatal outcomes. Cars and bikes do not mix well on our roads. I enjoy cycling with my grandchildren, but children under 10 are not able to concentrate for riding on the roads and should be on paths. The local off-road cycling tracks in Sale are excellent, but limited, and this new track would be a great new dimension for local cyclists. I had a meeting with council workers and Vic Roads, and the view was that the track should be 3 metres wide so that walkers, recreational cyclists and serious cyclists can all travel safely. Also, it was felt the track should be made from asphalt or concrete rather than gravel. Although that'll be much more expensive initially, it'll require less maintenance and in the long term be cheaper. And if we can save one person's life or one person from a life of permanent disability, that would cover the cost involved in the cost of the track. Now, what are the advantages and benefits to the community of the bike track? One, safety. As I said, cyclists and cars do not mix well on our roads, and the new barriers on the Sale-Maffra road limit space for cyclists, and many cyclists perceive that it's more dangerous and feel exposed. Health and fitness, especially with our obesity epidemic in Gippsland. There's regional socialisation. The track will bring our communities closer together as many people will ride between the towns. There'll be activity for children, adolescents and families. There'll be increased business for our bicycle stores, increased business for our cafes, as cycling to another town and stopping for a coffee or lunch is a great way to spend the day. Some people will commute to work by bike rather than drive, and that'll make the traffic on the roads less. It'll decrease our carbon footprint. Tourism will increase as there'll be more visitors from Victoria, interstate and overseas, and that'll increase the patronage of our cafes and restaurants and for accommodation. With further development, there's the South Gippsland tracks that are increasing, and hopefully one day we'll have a loop that'll go Melbourne, South Gippsland, Sale and back to Melbourne. And also there'll be a connection between Stratford and Bairnsdale one day. When those things are done, there'll be increased tourism opportunities, and we'll probably find the development of tourist companies like in Europe that'll look after people for cycle hire, transferring luggage, looking for food and accommodation for them, as in Europe. I've been amazed with these campaign, how positive people were with it, and I think it would be a great asset for the Wellington Shire. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a motion. Councillor Crosley.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that Council receive the attached petition in relation to a request for an off-road bike path from Sale to Maffra.
Seconded by Councillor McCubbin. Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion is carried. Councillor Crosley.
Thank you. Thank you for your well-considered submission, and thank you for attending to support that. And certainly 2,000 plus signatures is very impressive. But as we won't be making a decision this evening, under our local laws, and also for practical reasons, it lays on the table for the officers to develop an appropriate report, and for the councillors as a whole to consider that report and debate and make that a future decision, and it will be within the next two council meetings, a decision, and you're quite welcome to attend that as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Crosley. We move on to item A9. Oh, of course. If you are only interested in this particular item, don't feel obliged to stay and watch the excitement forever. So if you want to...
Looking after you.
Yeah, so... yeah, we're not offended by that in any way, shape or form.
They could have stayed a few minutes.
Cheers, thank you very much. Moving on to item A9, invited addresses, presentations or acknowledgements. Councillor Crosley, I understand you have one.
Yes, Mayor, this is a more positive part of the meeting is that on the 7th of November, the 2019 National Architects Award were announced in sunny Brisbane, and there were 35 award winners and projects, and there was a further 12 commendations. It was actually, fortunately, the Port of Sale was shortlisted, and one of 8 that was shortlisted for the National Architect Awards on Public Architecture, the Sir Zelman Cohen Award, and we were very pleased and certainly thrilled for FJMT to receive a national commendation under that section. It was also interesting in that particular award section were large projects like the Parliament of Victoria Members Annex, which was a huge multi-million-dollar project. We were in very esteemed company. And it was also, if I could just quote from Claire Cousins, who was the immediate past president of the Institute of Juries and Chairs, she said that a number of themes emerged across all categories for this year, projects that delivered worthy outcomes with little means. I think that sort of covers us. And the projects that demonstrated the value of architecture through public benefit, the projects with clear commitments to social and environmental stability. All of these qualities make significant contributions to our cities and regional centres. So I think that we're certainly very well qualified under that section. So congratulations to all of the team that was involved, for the community that has embraced the building and all the facilities in it, and especially to the team and architects of FJMT. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Crossley. I might just add a quote from the jury citation, which is pretty exciting. I may even embellish this a little, just see how we go. But the citation reads something like this. Port of Sale is an important project that supports both community life and tourism in the small Victorian regional city of Sale, Embellishment 1, growing to be more than just a small city. The architecture breathes life and lightness into an existing brutalist building, combining a regional art gallery, a library, council chambers, community meeting spaces, an information centre and a cafe within a single facility. The transformation of 2 existing courtyards into significant public rooms as the basis of the project's organisation is effective and resourceful. The integration of new services throughout is deft. I wouldn't have written that myself, but it's really good. And interventions to balance light with view, open the interiors to the broader context and realise strategic civic connections to the Sale waterfront are skillfully executed. And I'm sure they would have said, and the incredible use of timber throughout this building is an amazing reflection of what the timber industry here in Victoria can deliver, not only for now but for all time. I'm sure they meant to put that in there. If they haven't, I've just added it. So to all concerned with this project, and I know we've waxed lyrical a whole lot about this, but it's been an amazing success story, not only in what it delivers for all of us, but what it delivers outside of Sale and the region, and the recognition that it's had both professionally, but everyone who has the opportunity to visit this building and gaze out upon the port, this new perspective that we didn't perhaps have previously, is enriched by it. So congratulations obviously to FJMT, the architects, to Sharon and your team who were integral in pulling this all together, the support we had from Chris's team as well, and the support of the John Leslie Foundation and the various other tiers of government. This has been an outstanding success, and thank you for bringing it to our attention today, Councillor Crossley. So multi-award winning, and you can say that very comfortably now. So well done to all concerned. Moving on to item A10, there was a question on notice from Councillor Marr, and I think the process is in fact that there is no motion required in regard to this, but Mr Hasty, I think you were able to respond to this question on notice.
Thank you, Mayor. just to highlight the key points from our response. This section of path in Alberton was inspected earlier this year and a number of hazards were detected through those inspections. So at the time they were marked with little yellow hazard signs. We then put the projects onto the footpath renewal program, and that contract was awarded at the last council meeting. So works and program to commence over the next couple of months and finish in February. As part of the works, we'll notify adjoining neighbours as those works commence. So a good outcome for this instance.
Thanks, Mr Hasty. Councillor Marr.
Could I just say thank you to Chris and your team with regard to the response, and I know that the Alberton community will be very happy, particularly those that are walking to school, walking to the general store and also walking to the pub. Thank you.
Okay.
Stumbling home.
Moving on to item A11, Mayor and Councillors' Activity Report. Councillor McCubbin.
Thank you. I'd like to move that the Mayor and Council Activity Report be noted, please.
Second to that motion, Councillor Bye. Is that motion opposed? Motion is carried. Councillor McCubbin.
Would you like to say something first?
I would. I just very conscious of getting my order right tonight.
No, you're absolutely fine.
Look, I just want to touch on a couple of key issues in regard to this particular report. We've obviously talked all things timber tonight already, but there's a couple of other things I'd like to point out amongst and thank the councillors who in fact covered off a range of activities. I just want to touch on a couple that I was involved in particular with Councillor Hull, Councillor Ripper. I don't think I missed anybody, being at the up at the showgrounds with the arrival of the Need for Feed run again, some $50,000 supported by Freemasonry Victoria to get feed to our farmers. A great community effort. We're delighted to see that, and it was really a great experience to be up there with the men and women who give of their time freely to do that community activity. A great job. It's the second time we've seen them second time I've seen them. I've probably been here more often than that during this incredible long-lasting drought that we continue to endure. So that was a great effort. The other thing that I'd like to point out was that I went to a dinner with the Solus project during the reported period. And what I think is so topical about that is that this is an incredibly exciting potential solar project for our area. And I'd raise that in the context of two things. For those who listened to the radio this morning, the ABC here in Gippsland covered off the impending demise of coal-powered coal-fired power stations. I knew I'd get the words right eventually. And the likelihood of their closures sooner rather than later, and it was a matter of some discussion today. And to have been present with the proponents of what's an incredibly exciting solar project was really, for me, very enlightening. And if they can get this thing to fly, it will be sensational, potentially supplying up to 20% of Victoria's energy needs from this particular project. But importantly, because of location, this is the place where we need to be generating energy. Latrobe and Wellington, here where we've got the connectivity into the system. And they made the point during that dinner that there's a number of projects that have been floated in places like Mildura and other places where perhaps it's alleged that the sun shines a bit more, but looking out the window, I doubt that. But it's that connectivity which makes this a really viable place to generate electricity from alternate sources, and as the supply to transmission infrastructure declines from the coal industry, the capacity is here for connectivity. And interestingly, we have Ross Garno here next week or the week after, Councillor McCubbin, talking about these opportunities. So I think Gippsland's really well positioned in regard to that. I think the other thing I wanted to just touch on briefly, and again was topical today, was talking about in regard to agriculture, the importance of what we're using in terms of fertilisers and other things. We had a visit out to the soil and organic recycling facility out at Dutson. And again too, we find Wellington so incredibly well placed to deal with not only the circular economy, the emerging economy, the things that are really exciting to position our future. And I just wanted to touch on that as well. I've already made mention of being blindsided by the announcement of the timber industry, and I don't need to say any more about that, but thanks to all the councillor colleagues in regard to this matter. Councillor McCubbin.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you very much for your efforts over the last month, and the other councillors who had a very busy time. Can I just touch on a couple of things that I was involved in as well? I might mention myself and a number of senior staff and a number of councillors was involved in the Gunai-Kurnai day where we went to East Gippsland in particular and were shown around a number of sites and chatted to a number of Indigenous representatives of that region. I found that to be a wonderfully eye-opening experience, and certainly one that I know all of us went away with a greater understanding of the nature of Indigenous culture within our region and how proud we can be of that culture and what they are doing today to look after their community and, of course, the broader community and what they can provide for us. I also went to that evening to Miradong, and I'd like to thank the people from Yarram. I know Councillor Ma was really the lead there, but it was pleasing to go around to Miradong and to see what that organisation is doing in terms of their annual meeting. That was certainly a highlight to me. I will mention the Sustainability Awards in Melbourne. I was very fortunate as the chair of the Gippsland Climate Change Network, which I represent as on behalf of council, so it's a council committee. We were nominated for the Premier Sustainability Awards in a very tough category. Unfortunately, we didn't win. Zednet Hepburn won our area, which they're Tarrant Lane. She's unbeatable. But we were well received. They even gave us a shout out from the stage. I was pretty happy with that. And the Minister was there and did the presentation. So it was a lovely night all round, and it was pleasing to be able to see the many sustainability projects which are going on, particularly in rural Victoria, which are adding value to our environment. I will also mention that the Minister, Lily D'Ambrosia, came into Morwell to make a presentation to the good people of Locksport. I know that sounds all a bit... Anyway, the Locksport Community House got a donation of a PV, solar panels on their roof, as courtesy of the Power Hub, which I represent on behalf of Council. So Bill Klein from the Locksport Community House turned up in Morwell. We were fortunate enough to drive him down there, and the Minister passed on we didn't have a big cheque, but we were able to pass on a big solar panel that we all carried around with us, which was a bit silly, really. But, we got a good photo, and that was the main thing, I suppose. Look, it was great. It was great that the neighbourhood house now will be able to save money on their electricity bills and also contribute to the environment, which I thought was absolutely wonderful as well. I better mention one other thing, and that is the Youth Film Festival, which happened in Sale. I mentioned that because my daughter was very much involved in the organising of it and put in a film. But I'd like to thank the young people for their enthusiasm for the film festival. It's amazing actually seeing the way young people come together. They organise themselves. I kept saying things like, I'm available if you want to talk to me. Clearly, they didn't talk to me at all, and I think that's and it's fantastic. I absolutely support the fact that young people can. And it was a wonderful night. I unfortunately didn't get there. But it was a wonderful night. I was actually at the Sustainability Awards, I think, that night. But it was a wonderful night, and I'd like to congratulate all the young people for their leadership in making it all happen. So thank you very much, and thank you very much for a very busy last month.
Thanks, Councillor McCubbin.
I was trying to stretch it.
Councillor Bye.
Mayor, I'd just like to mention something as well. I was lucky enough to accompany the Mayor and a few of the officers out to the Gippsland Water, Soil and Organics Treatment Facility. I thought I'd just expand a little bit more on that. My recollection was I thought we'd go out there and we'd see a heap of garden waste in rows letting it rot. But there's actually a science to that sustainability of what they do out there. I didn't realise that paddies, when they have pies that are no good in ingredients, or there's eggs or chickens from chicken farms, or even soiled milk that they've got from farms that they can't process, all ends up at that site. And the way they treat it, it's not just whack it in windrows and turn it over. They actually measure the temperature, what they put into that product. They then let it go for a number of weeks till it actually becomes to a compostable product that then they can then turn over and recycle. They then get to a product with all this waste that is just like garden that you can use. It's called Revive, Gibson's ground speed. Then sell that product all over Victoria and far and wide. But it's amazing to see that we can turn waste into an end product. And there is acres and acres of windrows. And they are turning this byproduct. This byproduct doesn't just come from Gippsland, it comes from all over Victoria. So it's a fantastic facility to go and actually see how they turn all this waste into a usable product. Even when they sift it out, they have a magnet that actually catches nails. They have hammers and things that are thrown in. All that gets caught. It's a great product. And how they do it and how they take the plastics out and the things that can't be used and recycle those as well, but end up with this product that can be used on gardens and spreading on paddocks. So well done to everyone.
Yeah, it's a great place to visit, and if you need to clear your sinuses, even better. So it's going to move on to Report of Delegates. Councillor Hole, I understand you've got a report for us.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Last Thursday, accompanied by General Manager of Economic Development, John Webster, we attended the Timbertowns Victoria meeting, the first one we've been to for a while, and the new committee was elected back in July, and so the organisation was 100% kosher or legal. So we had the full protection of council. As you can probably imagine, there was a lot of discussion in relation to timber issues around the state, and the Green Triangle came up as to the plantations and where they're going, what they have to do, and Scotty about the amount of money that Dan Tehan got for their roads. Somebody we're going to have a talk with, but anyway, well, if he can get it. But then the last part of the afternoon, and most of the afternoon, was put aside to deal with the explosion in relation to the closing down of the native timber industry. What came out of the meeting, at the meeting resolved, and I'll read the resolution, the meeting resolved to write to the Premier expressing profound disappointment and the lack of consultation prior to the announcement, requesting that all reports and data used to make this decision be released. At Timbertowns Victoria write to all members seeking their support in the development of a consultancy brief that seeks independent and unbiased report, seeks the availability level for the use of the silvertop regrowth. We want to know the current plantation resource availability and the projected plantation for future needs, and where and what type of tree is to be established in the plantations. We want to know the socio and economic impacts on individual communities and the Victorian economy. And the TTV wants to work in partnership with the peak forestry bodies to develop a response with relevant members of Parliament and the bureaucrats. So that was the resolution. And the other report I got as a delegate, and I haven't written it up yet, but I have time, was the National Timber Council had a meeting, executive had a meeting in Traralgon Saturday afternoon, and of course the same issues on the agenda, but that will be dealt with on the 28th of November at the annual meeting in Melbourne.
Thanks, Councillor Hull. Moving on to item C1, item C1.1, the Chief Executive Officer's report. Councillor Rossetti.
Thanks, Mayor. I move that the Chief Executive Officer's report be received.
Seconder for that motion, Councillor Marr. Is that motion opposed? Not, the motion is carried. We'll move on. Moving on to item C1.2, October 2019 Council Performance Report. Councillor Stevens.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor. I'd like to move the Council receive and note the October 2019 Council Performance Report as attached.
Seconder for that motion, Councillor Ripper. Is that motion opposed? Not, the motion is carried. Councillor Stevens.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. There's a number of interesting things in the October Performance Report, but I'd just like to highlight a couple of particular items. Firstly, I note that we issued 635 debit cards under our drought performance program, and that was very good to see those cars taken up, and we had very good feedback about their expenditure in the local community. I'm also excited by the fact that the Yarram Aerodrome is going to get a fuel facility, and works have commenced on this, and this is not basically costing council, it's being installed by a private operator who will operate the facility, and I'm very hopeful that we get a positive outcome for additional use at the aerodrome by that facility being installed. I also note, Mayor, that our swim school enrolments have reached their best ever result with 883 young people registered in that program. I also am pleased to see that at the October council meeting there were 37 community access grants approved by council to a number of groups, obviously 37 groups, for the value of $165,634. I'm also pleased to note that preparations are well underway for the 2019-2020 fire season, and given the recent wildfires in northern New South Wales and Queensland, it's obviously going to be something for us to watch closely this season. And I also I was pleased to see that our staff and other volunteers, councillors who were involved in the 2018-2019 season were recently acknowledged by the issue of special pins, I think it was, from the state government. So that was a good outcome. Thank you to all those staff who took part, because I think the council performed very well in the work that we did in supporting the community in the fires we had in the last fire season. And just in relation to the actual financial performance in the October report, Mayor, the only comment I'd like to make is that we're, of course, in the early part of the financial year, and looking at the financial report, everything is on track for our budget to be actually carried out pretty much as the council adopted it earlier in the year. So thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Stevens. If we could move on, or before we do that, we might welcome the Sale Scouts. So good to see you. Moving on to item C, 1.3, Wellington Shire Council submission to the Victorian Local Government Rating System Review. Councillor Crossley.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that Council note Wellington Shire Council's submission to the Victorian Local Government Rate System Review Panel.
Ms. Second for that motion, Councillor Bye. Is that motion opposed? Not, the motion is carried. Councillor Crossley.
Thank you. One might say that this review is well overdue. I think it's been tinkered with but not really changed for over a century, so it's well and truly due for a review. And also we've joined with other councillors and the MAV in making this submission. The interesting thing is that the much-hailed fair go rate system by the government is actually a rate cap, not a particular system. And I would suggest that it's not particularly fair either. The system has really highlighted greater inequalities than actually trying to treat fairness and get more equality into the system of rates. I would suggest that the rating system is the most unfair tax that we have in Australia. The other thing is that the government doesn't seem to think that a rate capping is all that useful for them, because since the 2015-16, the state property tax revenue has increased by 33%, and over that same time the local government rates have increased by 9%. So I think there's the state government realises that by capping something, it doesn't actually match what you have to pay to provide the services. So they reflect that in their system, but they are imposing really an impossible system on local government and our communities. It's also an unfair system between the Victorian councils aren't all the same. We're not a homogenous group. There's very large, wealthy metropolitan councils. There's rural and regional and major community, larger rural capital areas. They all have different needs and requirements. And it's interesting to note that some metropolitan councils can offset their cost and defray the cost to their communities, while some are raising $30 million in car parking fines. It's like an incredible amount of money. So that would be, what, a third of our budget. So really, it's not a system that's working. It's well overdue, and I do hope that the government is listening to the lead body, the MAV, and to our submissions. It's only a 3-pager for people to have a look on page 144 on the papers. I suggest it's quite enlightening and people have a look at it. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Crossley. If we could move on to item C2.1, Assembly of Councillors. Councillor Bye.
Thanks, Mayor. I move the Council note and receive the attached Assembly of Councillor records for the period 30th of October 2019 to the 13th of November 2019.
Second of that motion, Councillor Ripper. Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion is carried. Councillor Bye will move on. Moving on to item C3.1, monthly planning decisions, September. Councillor Marr.
I move that Council note the report on recent planning permit trends and planning application determinations between the 1st of September and 30th of September 2019.
I have a second for Councillor Crossley. Is that motion opposed? Not, the motion is carried. Councillor Marr.
On the 4th of April 1893, page 7 of the Argus Melbourne, there was a report that the Port Albert Hotel had completely been destroyed by fire. Over 100 years later, on the 17th of February 2014, the community once again saw the Port Albert Hotel burn. So it was with great pleasure to read in this report that the property at 35 Wharf Street, Port Albert, had submitted a permit for building and works and the construction of a hotel. And I think that this is a wonderful thing for the Port Albert community, and we will certainly look forward to the construction of that building.
Thanks, Councillor Marr. Hopefully lightning will not strike 3 times. Item C 3.2, proposed sale of Lot 21 West Sale Airport. Councillor McCubbin.
Thank you. I'd like to move the recommendation, Mayor, that Council authorise the Chief Executive Officer to offer for lease and then sale council land described as Lot 21 Williams Drive, Fulham at West Sale Airport. 2, Council advertise its intention lease and sell land at West Sale Airport, with the sale of land being at or above market value, subject to the provisions of the Local Government Act of 1989, sections 189, 190, 223, including calling for submissions in relation to the proposed sale. 3, subject to not receiving any submissions, Council authorise the Chief Executive Officer to progress the sale at or above the current market value, including executing the necessary documents. And 4, I shall take as read, please.
Thanks, Councillor McCubbin. Seconder for that motion, Councillor Bye. Is that motion opposed? Not, the motion is carried. Councillor McCubbin.
Thank you very much. Just to explain to our scouts what's going on here, we have some land out there at the airport that we were given some years ago. Boy, are we lucky. And we have, over the years, provided all sorts of resources and infrastructure for that particular section of land. When we want to sell bits of that land, we have to advertise that we're going to do it. People can put in objections and say, no, you can't sell that land. It's really, really important. I'm sure they won't do that. And maybe then we can sell at market value to the people concerned. We have had an offer to purchase the land, or somebody has offered that they would like us to go through the process. It will require a subdivision. It will require us to go through this legislative issue that I've raised tonight. We are hopeful, therefore, that we can do one of 2 things, and that is to sell some land that we're not currently using to a business that will relocate to our area, a business involved in the aeronautics industry. And of course, to be able to sell the land means that we get some money from it as well, so that we can afford to do all sorts of nice things for the young people of the Wellington Shire. All right, I'm just trying to bring them into it somehow, Councillor Rossetti. Anyway, we've put it forward now. It's up to people to, if they don't like it, to object. If they object, then we're going to have to reconsider or think whether their objection is vital. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and sell that land, and who knows, you might see a new business on that land, and you can say you were there the night that business first begun its embryonic green shoots into becoming a viable industry. Thank you.
Can I say? Thanks, Councillor McCubbin. Yeah, exciting. I don't think I couldn't have expressed that any better. I really couldn't. No, I couldn't. No. We move on to item C 5.1. Councillor By, you need to declare.
Thanks, Mayor. I just have a conflict, an indirect interest, a conflict of duty, and like to be excused, please, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor By. Wait for Councillor By to leave the room. Councillor Ma.
I move that council note the information regarding applications received under the Quick Response Grant Scheme for the period of July 2019 to October 2019 as at attachment A.
Done. Councillor Crosley was just that fraction quicker. So seconded by Councillor Crosley. Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion is carried. Councillor Ma.
Quick response grants offer a quick turnaround for community groups and individuals within the Wellington Shire. There is a limit to community groups of $2,000 and to individuals up to $500. And it's great to see that the Shire's been able to support community groups, but particularly local youth within our municipality. And there has been a variety of state events from around Australia and New Zealand that we have been more than happy to provide $500 to the individuals to allow them to attend these events. One of the other events with the community group was the Gormandale Country Women's Association, which I was very happy to be a part of when they had their 70th anniversary of the original founding group. And it was lovely to see that there were founding members' families and future family members, grandchildren, all sorts of people at this event that saw over 100 people attending from all areas of Australia. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Barr. We might get Councillor By back.
Councillor By?
If we move on now to item C5.2, Briagolong Recreation Reserve Committee of Management Minutes. Councillor Ripper.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move that Council receive the minutes from the Briagolong Recreation Reserve Committee of Management's general meeting held on the 14th of October 2019, and 2, note the committee is in the process of developing rules of behaviour for users. A draft is attached for information only. Once endorsed by the committee, it will be brought to a future council meeting for approval as per the terms of reference.
Councillor Hole. That was seconded by Councillor Hole. He was right out of the blocks very quickly. Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion is carried. Councillor Ripper.
Thank you, Mayor. On Monday, $700,000 has been spent on a redevelopment of the Briagolong Recreation Reserve, which has been made up of $300,000 from the Wellington Shire, Federal Government $250,000, and Victorian Community Sport and Infrastructure $100,000. And for a community the size of Briagolong, I'm very pleased to say $40,000 was contributed by the committee, which was absolutely fantastic. The federal member Darren Chester and a state member Tim Bull were at the opening, and the reserve has volunteers. As a lot of people know, they are the backbone of our community. The volunteers have worked very, very tirelessly to organise the day. And the day, for those councillors who attended, it was immaculate. Absolutely everything out there was immaculate, and I'm proud to be the councillor who sits on that committee. The Briagolong Junior Football Club, the Cricket Club, Tennis Club and the Pony Club are the residents of that area. So I'd like to thank the committee for their dedication and also the volunteers. Once again, I'm going to mention that again, volunteers. And 2 weeks ago they had an open day, and the amount of people who turned up on that open day, it was absolutely windy, terrible day in Sale and Stratford. You go out to Briagolong, where was the wind? There was not a breath of wind. So they had an absolutely wonderful day out there. So congratulations to everyone, and thank you for all those groups who have put in funding, and I can assure you that it will be well looked after. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Ripper. I don't think there's any urgent business.
No urgent business.
Okay, if we can move on to...
However, we do have a chat room.
We have a chat room comment, so we can deal with that in a moment. Just take this opportunity to remind the gallery. Gallery comments are an opportunity for members of the public to raise any particular matter they wish. This allows those in the gallery to speak directly to councillors, but it is not a forum designed for open discussion or debate. We will listen respectfully to what you have to say and make the commitment that the Mayor will respond to you in writing within 1 week if required, and a copy of that response will be circulated to all councillors. This is not a forum for members of the public to lodge complaints against individuals, including councillors and staff, particularly as that individual gets no public right of reply to any matter raised. We take complaints seriously, and in line with the guidance from the Victorian Ombudsman and the Local Government Inspectorate, we request that any specific complaint against an individual be put in writing. This way, your concerns can be properly dealt with while ensuring fairness to all parties concerned. If you wish to speak, we remind you that this part of the meeting is being recorded and broadcast on our website. Council official minutes will record that you have spoken to Council and the subject you spoke to Council about, but will not record specific comments. We ask that you state your name in full, where you're from, and you have 3 minutes. And given the composition of the gallery tonight, I would expect that this matter be conducted in a respectful and appropriate way. So is anyone who wishes to speak to Council, they can come forward to the lectern and speak in accordance with the parameters I've just outlined.
I'm Judy Richards. I live at Lower Long, but I am involved with multiple community groups in Stratford. The reason I'm here tonight is to raise a couple of issues. One, it would be fantastic if the council could continue to be involved if and when the courthouse sale or lease or whatever the future holds in Stratford for the courthouse. We're still very much going round and round the circle, I think, trying to decide what's going to happen next, but it's a critical part of the Stratford community life. The second reason I'm here is that we have started a neighbourhood house, and part of it is based in the courthouse currently, the Segway coffee shop, gallery space. Other bits of it are being run from the library, and we've come up with 2 issues for the library. The most critical one is the fact that the toilet space needs to be upgraded so that it is totally disability friendly. We're surprised that in fact it's survived as long as it has, given it's been used for the library, but obviously maybe it's slipped under the radar somehow, or there's other rules. We don't understand it, and we haven't been able to get an answer. I guess the other thing is it's fairly critical, we believe, that that happen quickly because A, the fire season and that space is often used if people need to be brought in from out of town, and B, it limits what the activities that the neighbourhood house can actually run, because we want to be able to run programs that disabled people are able to attend. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to the council? We've got that, thank you.
My name's Keith Mills from Crooked River. I've got 3 items to discuss. I hope I don't go over time, but I'd like to commend the council on the brilliant efforts and the leadership it's taken under obtaining relief for farmers, the financial assistance and the chasing up of rate relief, which I hope can go ahead. I think I'll not be alone in expressing these sentiments, and I don't know how much feedback council's had in a positive manner, but I'd like to add mine at least anyhow and say thank you very much. And it appears that Wellington Shire Council's a leader in this activity, so I'd certainly like to give my heartfelt thanks for the efforts that are being made. The other item I've got to, I feel I should respond is about the Wonnangatta Road, because I spoke at a previous meeting about the positives and the negatives that have been happening out on the Wonnangatta Road, which is where I live. And I'd like to inform council that, I guess they know already, but thanks that the deficiencies that were evident out there are being addressed. The 2.5k to the 5k section that was looking like it was going to be not attended to is about to be attended to. I spoke to the contractors today. And also the underground pipes, which are in a bad state of disrepair, and a lot of those have been crumbled down and made ineffective. At least a number of those are going to be reinstated, and I think that's very important because it'll preserve the value of the work on the resurfacing that's been done, which without that, when you get heavy rainfall, the water runs along the side of the road and eventually finds a place to go across, and if there's no patent pipe under the road, it goes across the surface and does substantial damage on the gravel road. So thanks very much to whoever's responsible for getting that sorted out. Very much welcomed. The third thing I want to speak about is not such a positive thing. It's come to my attention that was, I won't mention names and I'm not even aware of the council staff involved, but there was a chap in Yarram. It's a fellow who's got an acquired brain injury. He's had that for about 8 or 9 years. He was hospitalised after an accident, and as part of his recuperation and recovery and ongoing welfare, it was advised that he get a little dog, which he did. And I think it was arranged through the hospital or some ancillary of the hospital up in the northeast where he was at the time. Anyway, he's been a resident of Yarram for quite some time now. A little while back he went shopping at the supermarket, which is just a walk. He's only about 1 block from where he lives, and he lives alone. He's unsupported, but his dog's vital to him. So he went shopping and at the supermarket had a big handful of groceries. Now, before he went into the supermarket, he tied his little dog up outside. So he's done the right thing. He's not attempted to take the dog into the shop. When he's come out, I think he's had a large bundle of groceries that he's struggled with, so he's wandered off home. And not till a little while later has he realised that he hasn't got his dog with him. Now, in the meantime, the dog's been discovered by somebody, and the council ranger has picked the dog up and taken it to the pound. And it's been 3 days it's taken this chap to raise the funds to pay the around about $200 to secure the release of the dog. And I personally don't think this is fair, given that the man's got an acquired brain injury and the dog's vital to his welfare. The other thing that came into it is that it appears, and I do have some veterinary knowledge, incubation periods and so forth, that that dog's contracted kennel cough as a consequence of being impounded, and that's added extra stress and cost to the gentleman involved, and it's added extra suffering for the little dog. So if there's a way that council can find to whether there's a scheme to identify people whose dogs are more vital than just the average run-of-the-mill dog, and find a way to avoid this sort of regrettable incident happening again, I'd like the council to do what it can to institute some changes in the rules or the way they're carried out to avoid this most unfortunate incident. And that's where I conclude.
Yeah. Thanks, Mr Mills. We'll take that on board. Anyone else wish to speak to council?
John McLennan from Longford. I don't know where to start. I really don't, because I did write a letter to council the 13th of September asking council to talk about meeting with the CEO about matters we're not going to go into publicly now. It'd be better if we could possibly talk amicably among the councillors. Perhaps not, we can't be talking openly now. It's better, I believe, should all be in committee with me. But I was just asking if, don't know what to do, because I'm aware that some of you obviously do not like me. That is for sure. But I'm me, and I don't go around corners. That's why I'm built. And I just sort of think, years ago, this council was amicable, could talk, but now I just feel as if I'm being shut out and not able to talk to anybody except one or two people like Councillor Stevens and Councillor Maher and Councillor McCubbin do show a lot of empathy and understanding, but just some of you just seem to don't like me or shoulder me. So will council consider to have a chat with me or I just don't know what to do or how to handle you, because I just feel as if you have the numbers against me and you don't like me. And until I get some approach from some of you, or the mayor probably in particular, to pull you together to be amicable and understanding, well, you're going to leave me wondering what I am.
John,
what will I do in the future?
John, I'll take this opportunity to, in fact, take the obligation to respond to you directly and personally outside this meeting. I'll review the correspondence which has gone between council and yourself, and I will come back to you within the next week or so for a discussion. So I can obtain copies of those. I don't need to see them from you. We'll have those all on file. I'll review the correspondence and then I'll come back. I will come back directly to you. I'll do that within the next week or so. Within the next week or so?
In the next week or so.
Yep, done.
Thank you very much.
Good on you. Now, is there anyone else in the gallery wishes to address council? I understand we have a chat room query. Acting CEO, do you want to cover that off for us?
Yes, that's right, Mayor. So we have a question from Alan Haywood, a Pearsondale resident, regarding traffic movement in Foster Street, and we will have an officer reply to his question directly.
Thank you very much. There's nothing further from the gallery. Now, for the benefit of the Scouts in particular, we, as a matter of process, we need to actually very shortly move into closed session. That will mean that, and that won't take very long. Councillor Stevens will do that very shortly, and then we'll continue with the rest of the discussion that we'd planned to have with you tonight. So in those circumstances, Councillor McCubbin.
Before we move into closed session, I just wish to announce that I've got a conflict of interest in regard to the closed session idea, and I wish to publicly, in open session, suggest that I have that indirect due to a conflict of duty, and I will be leaving the room when that is being discussed.
Thanks, Councillor McCubbin. I'm sorry I forgot to raise that, so my fault again. So, Councillor Stevens.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm going to have to put my other glasses away, so I'm going to appear closely at the screen here. I'll move that the meeting be closed to the public pursuant to section 89(2) of the Local Government Act 1989 to consider A, personnel matters, and H, any other matter which the Council or Special Committee considers would prejudice the Council or any person.
Second, don't need a second. Yes, we do. Second to Councillor Crosley. The motion opposed. If not, the motion's carried. And we're going to now move into closed session, so that means that the gallery can be vacated. We'll deal as quickly as we can with the business in closed session, and then we'll look forward to catching up with the Scouts again shortly.